Constitution Day and welcome to the National Constitution Center. We are so excited that you're joining us today. I know this program has been at the top of everyone's list. We are super excited to have Mary Beth Tinker join us today for a special program all about the First Amendment. I see we've got a ton of classrooms joining in. Do me a favor, folks, and test out that chat feature for me. Let us know, where in the world are you tuning in from? We love to see that. So let us know, where in the world, where are you? How are you celebrating Constitution Day? Let us know, and we'll get started in just a couple of minutes. Our friends in Knoxville, Tennessee, welcome. Super excited to have you. That is fabulous. Mississippi, welcome, Leah. It's so good to see you. This is my favorite part, having everyone come in. We've got California, Arizona, Kentucky, Florida, West Virginia. Are we going to get every state? This is amazing. Oh my gosh. Iowa, love it. Texas, Illinois, Indiana. Oh, friends, welcome. This is amazing. We are so excited to see everyone today. This is fantastic. We've got lots of friends joining us today. This is very, very exciting. Oh, I love it. All right, friends. Well, I do not want to take up any more of our very valuable time with our incredible guest speaker today. So without further ado, I'm going to kick us off and welcome everyone to the National Constitution Center's Constitution Day celebration. We are celebrating 236 years, wow, of We the People. We have amazing programs all day long, but I know that everyone has been super excited about this program today. We are so excited to welcome Mary Beth Tinker, who is here joining us. She's going to talk a lot about her Supreme Court case, the events leading up to that case, and the power, this is my favorite part, the power that students have. And I am so excited to share these amazing stories. We're so excited to welcome you all to hear these amazing stories. We're also joined by the center's Chief Content Officer, Tom Donnelly, who's going to be moderating this great conversation. And then at the end of the program, we're going to turn it over for your questions, students, because I know you have a lot of them. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Tom to kick us off, and welcome Tom and Mary Beth.
Thank you so much, Madison, and happy Constitution Day, everyone. I'm Tom Donnelly. As Madison said, I am the Chief Content Officer of the National Constitution Center, and this is just an amazing treat here on Constitution Day. We're joined by Mary Beth Tinker, who is a genuine constitutional hero. As we know, in 1969, at the age of 13, Mary Beth wore a black armband to school to protest the Vietnam War. A few other students, including her brother, joined her. The students were suspended for their actions. However, they believed their protest was a form of protected free speech. They eventually got their case to the Supreme Court, and they won. And Mary Beth's inspiring story, it's highlighted in the National Constitution Center's newest exhibit, the First Amendment, where we have some just excellent interviews with Mary Beth Tinker telling her story. We have one of the Tinker family armbands in the exhibit. But more than anything, I just want to thank her so much for joining us. The last thing I'll say before I turn it over to her is, students, please use the chat, use the Q&As. I want to bring in as many of your questions as possible as we really get into this program and get the conversation underway. But with that, Mary Beth Tinker, thank you so much for joining us here on Constitution Day.
Thank you so much, Tom, and thank you, Madison, and welcome everyone who is tuning in today, teachers, students, everyone. What a time it is for young people speaking up and having a say about your lives and paying attention to what is going on in our world and in our communities. It's so great to see students that are speaking up about the environment and about having better food even in their cafeterias, and students speaking up about what school is like and what subjects should be taught. Students speaking up against racism, all kinds of controversies, some around LGBTQ issues, and so much more. This case is partly about controversy. And in the ruling, Abe Fortas, who wrote the decision at the Supreme Court in 1969, yes, over 50 years ago, he says, yes, some things we talk about in life are going to make us a little uncomfortable, but that's a price we have to pay for democracy and for education also. So it is partly a case about controversy. And I found, speaking with students all over the country for many years, students kind of like controversy. It kind of makes life a little more interesting, but we have to talk about things with respect for each other. And so that's what it's about too. I'm actually a nurse, and I worked mostly with children and teenagers. I was a family nurse practitioner. I'm retired right now. But I found that it's actually good for your health to speak up and to get involved and to pay attention and take part in some controversies too, of course, with respect for others. So we're celebrating youth voices, and thank you to the Constitution Center for setting this up and for all you do to promote democracy in our country. Celebrating youth voices. Tinker versus Des Moines was decided in 1969 when I was a junior in high school. Maybe we've got some juniors out there listening. I was a junior, and I was shocked that the Supreme Court ruled that, yes, you do have free speech rights in public school. Why was I surprised? Because, a lot of kids think, oh, these adults, they're not going to say we should have anything to say. They think we don't know what we're talking about. So I was really surprised and happy when the Supreme Court ruled in favor, not only for us, but for all of you. It was a 7-2 decision, a very strong decision, saying that neither students or teachers leave their constitutional right to free expression when they enter the schoolhouse gate. And it was about the First Amendment, free speech, free press, freedom to assemble, the freedom to have your own religious views, the freedom to petition. It had to do with the First Amendment and especially your free speech. And why is it so important? Because kids, young people, you are so important for our society, for making things better, for taking us forward. And no wonder, they say kids are such a great leap for democracy. When young people have a say, as it turns out, it's better for everyone. And so, yes, speak up. It's also good for your health. That's what I found out. As a nurse, it's good for your physical health, your social health, your mental health, all of it. For you to advocate for yourselves, to say what would be good for you, what would help you live your lives and be happy. And that's what the First Amendment is really great for. It's great for people to be able to say what would be good for you yourselves. And why is that so important? Because kids have such great ideas. And you have all this energy and potential and creativity. And a lot of it is because of your developmental stage, your age makes you just have more of that energy. And everybody knows that kids have a lot of energy and a lot of ideas and creativity. But without your rights, you're cheated, not only from being able to contribute that yourselves, but the whole society is cheated from not hearing about your great ideas and your creativity. So that's what this is about too. Kids and the First Amendment go together. Kids and free speech go together. And that's what this case is about. I didn't know about all that when I was growing up in Iowa. Yay, Iowa. I know we've got some Iowans out there. I was growing up in Iowa. That's me and my little sister Hope and my brother Paul. I was about 5 years old there. I didn't know about the First Amendment and all these things, but my dad was a Methodist preacher. And so he taught us that you should speak up and you should make the world a more loving, caring place and put your ideals into action. And so now you have a chance to put your ideals into action, students. The ideals of the Constitution, also like equality, equal justice. And my dad and my mom taught us the values of love and also justice. And really, that's what it's all about, is love. As a student reminded me a while back, he said, this is Josh, I think he was in Ohio. He said, Mary Beth, I like what you're saying, but could you please be sure to talk about love more? And so I said, yes, I will. That's so true, because it is all about love and respect for each other, and trying to make a better world, not only for humans, but for all creatures on earth. Well, when I was little, I was about 5 years old, when I learned a lesson about love and equality and the ideals of the Constitution. There was a swimming pool in our town in Iowa where they did not allow Black families to swim. Yes, that's true. And it was going on all over the country. Well, some of the kids at our church, they asked my dad to go up there with them and try to change that. They said, that's not very loving, Reverend Tinker. We need to change that. So my dad said, okay, I'll do that. So he went with the kids and they went up there. Some people at the swimming pool said, oh, well, that's too bad. That's the way it's always been. Well, we're not going to accept that answer. So they kept speaking up and they kept trying to change that. And they did. They got that change. That swimming pool allows everyone to swim there now, and swimming pools all over the country do. But it didn't just happen. It happened because people spoke up and used their rights, their First Amendment rights, and changed things. But when you do that, not everybody always likes it. My dad got in trouble for doing that, and people said, oh, Reverend Tinker, you shouldn't be up at the swimming pool. You should just be preaching on Sunday and leading the choir. Well, my dad said, I can't separate my life like that. I have to live my values. If I talk about love in church, I'm going to make it happen in the neighborhood also. So that's how I was raised. You're supposed to speak up for what you believe is right. And what I found out is it's a really good way of life too. Well, as a result of all that, we had to move actually to a new town. And we moved up to Des Moines, Iowa. What up there, you won't believe what we saw on the news. Thanks to the free press, we saw these amazing young people. The Birmingham Children's Crusade of 1963. I was only about 10 years old when this happened, and 2,000 Black students protested and rallied and used their rights to speak up for racial justice that year. So much of your rights in public school right now build on the efforts of students speaking up for racial justice. And I'll tell you how that happened, because these kids were marching and rallying. They couldn't even go into the store a lot of times because of the discrimination. Their parents didn't get the good jobs that the white families got, and their schools didn't have the same money as the white schools. So the students said, that's not right, that's not fair. See, first you have to notice when something's not fair. And that's something kids are really, really good at, noticing when something's not fair. And there's always some adult around that's like, well, life's not fair, kids, so just get used to it. But I say, don't get used to it. Life should be fair. And these kids thought so too, the kids in the Birmingham Children's Crusade, and they rallied and they sang songs like "This Little Light of Mine, I'm gonna let it shine." And they were marching and rallying. Oh, some people got really, really mad at them. The Ku Klux Klan, the white supremacists. Well, now we know they don't dress like this too often, the white supremacists. Now they wear more like jeans and t-shirts, suits and ties and dresses and skirts. But back then, the white supremacists, the Ku Klux Klan, they got really, really mad at the kids for speaking up, because these white supremacists, they thought white people should run everything. So they got really mad at the kids, and they're like, these kids don't know anything, and we're going to show them. So they bombed their headquarters, the 16th Street Baptist Church. Oh, so sad. It was right on Sunday morning, September 15th, 1963. I had just turned 11 years old by then, 1963 September. And someone came by a picnic we were having and told us what had happened to the brave kids we had seen on the news, and how 4 little girls had been killed in the bombing. Cynthia, Addie Mae, Carol, and Denise. These girls were about the same ages as me and my sisters. They were 11 to 14 years old. And we heard about that and we felt so sad. This whole Tinker case is about you being able to express all your feelings, all your human feelings, not just the happy feelings that some people like to hear about. No, all your feelings, the sadness, the grief, the frustration, the anxiety, the fears, the worry, whatever it is, you should have a right to express that. And that's what this Tinker case is about. And we felt all those feelings when we heard about what had happened with these 4 little girls being murdered by the white supremacists. And so that's the first time we wore black armbands, because there were some amazing people, one named Bayard Rustin and one named James Baldwin. Maybe you've heard of the writer James Baldwin. They said, hey, we should wear black armbands, all of us, all over the country, for these little girls who had been killed, because black armbands are a symbol of mourning, of being sad, of grief. And that we should have memorial services all over the country, and we should wear black armbands. So that's exactly what we did in Des Moines, Iowa that year. I had just turned 11 years old, and that's me in the middle. Over to the right, my sisters Bonnie and Hope. And to the left, Linda and Phyllis, our friends at this memorial service for the Birmingham children who had been killed. That was the first time we wore black armbands, or that we even heard about black armbands, but we did not wear them to school that time. Well, the next year was also amazing. An amazing year for young people speaking up and standing up for what's right. And that was called Mississippi Freedom Summer, 1964. That summer, 700 college students trained up in Ohio, and this is them training at Oxford, Ohio. They trained how to go to Mississippi and help register Black voters. Why did they have to do that? Because of the violence and terror of the Ku Klux Klan and the white supremacists who were stopping Black people from registering to vote. So these brave college students, they came from all over the country, and they went to Mississippi that year, and they trained first in Ohio, and they were called there by these amazing heroes of our country. Fannie Lou Hamer, and there she is right there. She had already been beaten and jailed for trying to register to vote in Mississippi, Ruleville, Mississippi, where she lived. Yeah, she got beaten and put in jail because she tried to register to vote. And then Ella Baker, that's another hero of our country. There she is right there. She started a group called the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. It was nicknamed SNCC, SNCC. These 2 women are like, wait a second, we should get some young people down here to help us. This isn't right. This isn't fair. And you know how young people really care about these things and care about fairness. And young people are brave, and they will stand up and speak up for what's right. So they called the students to come to Mississippi, and many, many students went, and they got on their buses and they sang freedom songs, and they went to Mississippi that summer, 1964. Oh, some people were mad about it. Yes, the Ku Klux Klan heard they were coming and started threatening and saying they would be in trouble and they might not live. And of course, you know, there's Confederate flag. Yes, there is a reason why people feel so emotional about the Confederate flag even today. But the students were brave, and they went on and they went to Mississippi. Well, when they got there, 3 of them disappeared and were murdered. Andrew Goodman, James Chaney, and Michael Schwerner. They had gone to investigate the bombing of a Black church, and they disappeared, and they were later found murdered. I'm going to tell you about the events of this summer and Mississippi Freedom Summer because they directly relate to the final ruling in the Tinker case. The events of this summer led to the ruling saying that you have free speech rights in public school. And I'll tell you how. Okay, when these 3 were murdered that summer, 1964, some Black students in Mississippi protested the murders by wearing these buttons to school. The buttons said, "One man, one vote," SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And the buttons were saying that everyone has a right to register to vote in the United States. Should not kill people just because they're trying to help others register to vote. Well, the students at their high school were told, no, you cannot wear those buttons to school. Sorry, that's too controversial. So the students started a court case. The court case was called Burnside versus Byers. And they won their case in Mississippi a couple of years later. when the appeals court, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, ruled that, wait a minute, those students should have been allowed to wear those buttons to school. Why? Because they did not substantially disrupt school. That standard that you can have your free speech rights, you can express the things you care about, as long as you do not substantially disrupt school. That would later be quoted in the Tinker ruling. And it is the standard in place right now today in public schools across the country. But it started back here in Freedom Summer, 1964. Well, that summer, oh my gosh, a call went out for people to come to Mississippi so these young people wouldn't be murdered. And my parents went there. They said, we have to stand with these brave people. We can't just preach about love in church. We have to actually put our values into action. So they went to Mississippi that summer for 2 weeks to show that they agreed with the students, what they were doing. And my parents came home on my 12th birthday, just as I was about to start 7th grade, and told us kids what was going on and what had happened. Now, some people believe that all of this is too difficult for you to hear about, and that it will be too emotional and that you'll feel bad, and it's too much for you to handle. But speaking with students all over the country, I hear that you do want to hear what is going on. And my parents certainly believed that we could handle it. And I was glad that they did tell us what was going on. Oh, by the way, here's the guys that murdered the 3 young men. This is their trial. They're having a good old time. They're chewing tobacco and laughing. They know nothing's going to happen to them. They can kill any person they feel like, especially if they're Black and they're trying to register to vote. This is a photo from the magazine, Life magazine, 1967, of their trial. They're not worried about it at all. Well, in the end, 9 of them did do some jail time. 2 to 9 years for the murders. And here's the sheriff and the deputy sheriff. They were in on the murders also. 2 to 9 years for 9 of the guys. But, oh, what a time it was. 1964, that happened. And then 1965, the Voting Rights Act was passed. Well, first in 1964, the Civil Rights Act was passed in Congress, and President Johnson signed it, saying you cannot discriminate in public places like hotels and restaurants, just because a person is Black or a different ethnic group or color. And that was major. And then in 1965, the Voting Rights Act. And now, because of that, millions of people of color were able to register to vote for the first time, including Native Americans, who also had not been able to register to vote. So the Voting Rights Act was huge in 1965, but it was weakened about 10 years ago at the Supreme Court. And so some people in Congress say, wait, we need to get a strong Voting Rights Act back again. So that's all going on. Oh, wait, I have to tell you something. This is amazing. You won't believe it. The very same day that the bodies were discovered of these 3 young men right here, Andrew Goodman, James Chaney, Michael Schwartz. And by the way, you can see movies about this all. One is called Mississippi Burning. But the very same day that these bodies were discovered, August 4th, 1964, off the coast of Vietnam, a US Navy ship claimed it was attacked, the USS Maddox. It turned out it was not attacked. But within days, the Congress voted to send thousands more troops to Vietnam. The war was already, and that's called the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution, 1964, August 10th, signed by President Johnson. The war in Vietnam was already going on, but it was under the radar of most Americans who didn't even know mostly where Vietnam was. But after they thought one of our Navy ships was attacked, then the resolution was passed almost unanimously in Congress to send thousands more soldiers to Vietnam. And there's a lot more to the history of the Vietnam War. And I urge all of you to learn more about it and just, pay attention to what the United States does as far as wars. And I know a lot of you do, and I know a lot of you probably have family in the military. And for you that do have family in the military, I want to encourage you to check out a website that's started by students that I learned about recently. It's called Bloom, like the flowers, Bloom. It's all for students whose families are in the military, and it's written by students for students. It's a very good resource. Okay, so wait, the Vietnam War. So the Vietnam War was escalating then. 1964, 1965 became some of the worst years for the Vietnam War. By 1968 and 1969, us kids were getting sadder and sadder, watching the news, hearing about neighbors being called off to war. And so we heard it was Christmas, yeah, Christmas time that year, 1965. And my dad would pray from the Bible with us and tell us the story, the Christmas story of the little baby in the manger and the hope for love and forgiveness in the world that all of this meant with the Christmas story. But we didn't see love and forgiveness on the news. We saw war, war, war all the time. And us kids said, that's not right. You adults should find a way to have peace and work out your problems and not be fighting and killing each other all the time. And so we heard about a plan to wear black armbands. Again, not for the Birmingham children this time. This time for those in Vietnam, the US soldiers and the Vietnamese who were suffering and dying in the Vietnam War. And so we decided to wear black armbands that Christmas time. And this time we decided to wear them to school. Well, the school board heard about it and the principals made a rule against armbands and said, no child will be allowed to wear black armband to school. So this is me and my mother and my dad's behind me and some of the students that wanted to wear black armbands at the school board meeting, trying to change their mind, but they wouldn't change their mind. So then we had to decide what to do. Well, I decided I would go ahead and wear my black armband and maybe I would get suspended, but it would be worth it to speak up and say how I felt about war and how sad I was about all of this killing all the time. And so I wore a black armband to school and I was sent to the office and I was so scared and nervous. And I got down there and they said, now, Mary Beth, take off that armband. That is against the rules. And I had a black armband like this. And now you can see one at the Constitution Center, like the ones that we wore. And the principal said, Mary Beth, it was Mr. Willitson, the vice principal. Mary Beth, take off that armband. That's against the rules. In a great stand of courage, I said, okay, Mr. Willitson. And I took it off. And I was really scared and nervous. And I went back to class. I got called back to the office where I got suspended anyway. I shouldn't even be here talking with you today because I took off the armband. I was scared. I was nervous. Well, I learned a very important lesson that day. You can do something even if you're scared and nervous. You never know, it might still make a big difference. And you probably will be nervous and scared when you speak up about something you care about. Chris Eckhart got suspended. My brother John got suspended. 5 kids got suspended. We tried to change the rule at the school board, but they would not change it. And so some people got really mad at us. Yeah, when you speak up about something, some people are going to get mad. That could happen. Well, this is a postcard we got, and people threw red paint at our house and even threatened to bomb our house, which was really crazy because we were speaking up for peace at Christmas time, but they called us communists, and that's what that red thing is, communist. You must be a communist. My mom would be like, no, we're actually not communists. We're actually Methodists. And by this time, we had also got involved with a religion called the Quakers, and they're all about peace. So yeah, some people got really mad at us though, but here's someone who didn't get mad. He was in the Marine Corps and he wrote a really nice letter to the editor, Harry Corey, saying, wait a minute now, why do you think I'm in the Marine Corps? Because I want there to be freedom of expression in our country. And I believe in our Constitution. These kids should have their freedom also. So that was really nice. And then another group that helped us has been around for about 100 years, the American Civil Liberties Union. And the ACLU, they said, we think you kids should have your rights. and they're all about people having rights. So they said, we are going to have to take this to court. Well, that is the other branch of government, because we have three branches. There's a legislative branch, a judicial branch, and an executive branch. Now, if one of those branches is accused of doing something against the Constitution, the other branch can check them. So that's what happened. The ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, they said, we're going to take this over to the judicial branch and tell them about what happened, how you kids got suspended. And we're going to have them check it. So that's what happened. That's how it got to court. Well, when we got to court, we lost at the district level. The lawyers argued back and forth. The school board lawyer said, wait, we get to decide what kids say in school. And our ACLU lawyer said, no, the kids should have some say too. And they argued back and forth and we lost. So then it was appealed to the appeals court. There's 13 appeals courts in the United States, and you can ask your teachers and figure out which one you are in. Ours was in the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals in Iowa. So it got up to the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals, and there the case was argued back and forth, and people looked at the record, the judges looked at the record. We lost again. So our young lawyer, Dan Johnston, he said, well, we're just going to have to appeal this to the Supreme Court and let them decide. Because, okay, wait, get this. Well, we lost at the appeals court for Iowa. The Mississippi students who had protested the murders of the 3 young men, they won. So now you have 2 appeals courts in different parts of the country saying different things about whether kids have rights in school. Mississippi court said, yes, students should have been allowed to wear those buttons. Iowa court said, no, students can't wear black armbands and express their feelings. So that's called a circuit split. And it was appealed to the Supreme Court, which only takes about 70 or 80 cases a year out of around 10,000 that want to be heard. So I was really surprised they even heard the case. And I was really surprised when we won the case in 1969, as I said, the court said by 7-2 that students are persons. This is a direct quote from the ruling. Students are persons under our Constitution with the rights and responsibilities of persons. And they said that neither teachers or students leave their rights when they go to school. But wait a minute, all rights have limits, okay? Every right has limits. So they said, now the limits for this is going to be that, yes, you have your free speech rights in public school, but you cannot substantially disrupt school when you use your rights. And for that, they cited the Mississippi case about substantial disruption. So you can't disrupt school with your rights. And number 2, you cannot impinge on the rights of others. So you can't step on other people's rights when you're using your free speech rights. So that was the ruling in 1969. I grew up, that was me around the time of the ruling. Yeah, I wasn't real happy because why? The war was raging. I was like, wow, well, great. Now we can wear a little black cloth on our arm, but there's still all this war all the time. Oh, it was pretty sad in a way. I was happy and sad at the same time. Did you ever have that happen? Happy and sad at the same time? Yeah, that's how I felt. Well, now I'm happy that we won the case because it helps you speak up about the things that you care about. And so many students are speaking up. And I became a nurse, as I said, and I started saying, wow, kids aren't really getting a fair deal in a lot of ways in our country. A lot of kids are breathing polluted air, dealing with climate things, and their schools aren't getting the kind of money they need. And sometimes their books are being censored and things. And I said, wow, kids need to speak up. So I went on a tour. I started traveling all over the country. This is one of my favorite stops back in my old junior high school, Warren Harding Junior High, where I had been suspended. But this time there was a big party the principal threw, and the superintendent came, and it was really great. And our superintendent of the Des Moines schools wrote a big article in the newspaper saying, you know what, I'm glad we lost that Tinker case, because we want our students to have a say about their lives. And I know a lot of your teachers that are here today and your principals in your schools probably feel the same way. And the Constitution Center does also. And that's why we're having this program today. So thanks, Tom, and thanks to everybody for having me here today. I'm so glad to be with all of you.
Mary Beth, thank you so much for that terrific presentation. We have about 10 minutes left, and I have some great questions from the students here to share with you. Here's the first one. As a teenager, did it ever cross your mind how big of an impact that your case would have on future generations?
Absolutely no, Tom. I had no idea. And that's the thing I learned too. History is made by small things, mostly by ordinary people. Like all of you, maybe. I don't know. I was pretty ordinary. And that's what I found out. The little things you say and do make a big difference.
Excellent. Here's one that just came in. What would you tell 13-year-old students passionate about rights in schools that are being told they are not old enough to know anything about the rights they are taking action on?
Well, that's called age discrimination, Tom. You know, some people disrespect young people and children, and that's rampant in our society. And it's really something we have to speak up against, because children and teenagers have a lot of great ideas. And actually, there's all kinds of stuff that's so interesting. There's studies showing that children can solve some problems that adults cannot. Why? Because young people have fresh perspective. It's like this girl told me recently, I think in Indiana, she's like, well, yeah, that's because we're fresher. And I was like, yes, you are fresher. And so we absolutely have to speak up for ourselves. And children and teenagers, you have to stand up for yourselves too. And don't listen to this, that you don't know anything. You know a lot. You know a lot of things that adults don't know.
Absolutely. Were you intimidated or anxious about your case going to the Supreme Court, and also while waiting for the court's decision?
Yes, I was intimidated and scared like most of my life. I mean, there's just so much out there that can make you nervous. And so I felt intimidated. When we went to the appeals court, it was in St. Louis. I was in Iowa and went to St. Louis, Missouri on the airplane. It was the first time I flew on an airplane. Oh my gosh, I was about 16 years old, and I was so worried of whether I was dressed right. And what if somebody had actually asked me a question or something and I wouldn't know what to say, and I was so nervous and scared. But what I learned is if you just keep going and little by little do it, it gets easier and easier.
Excellent. Now, you had mentioned the support of your parents here. I mean, were there other friends and family members that were asking you to reconsider? And on the other side, were there members of the faculty or staff that supported what you were doing?
There were some faculty that supported us. Actually, my little sister Hope was in 5th grade. She wore an armband to school also because she said, I want peace too. And even my little brother Paul in 2nd grade, he did too. Some people tried to act like, oh, your parents forced you to do that. No, that's not true. We sincerely that's people who can't accept the idea that kids actually do have ideas and views of their own. But the teacher at Hope's school defended Hope out in the playground because some kids were hassling her. And the teacher said, now, wait a minute, kids, Hope has a right to her views. And the same thing happened at North High School with my brother, John. And, you know, so there were some teachers that were with us, but I was lucky that my dad did not want us to wear the black armbands. But you see, kids are so persuasive. That's another one of your great qualities. And we said, wait, Dad, you taught us to speak up for ourselves, to speak up for peace. And you even went to the swimming pool and got them to change their rule about Black people not swimming. And so you can be persuasive. So we got our dad to come over to our side. Yeah. But we were lucky, but if you want to speak up about something and you feel like your parents aren't supportive and you really care about it, you could maybe talk to some other adults or other people and see what, you know, you can do to speak up about something that you care about. You do have a right to care about things that affect your life.
We have another person ask, could you share what you've been able to do to support student speech in later years?
Wow, well, today I was on a big call with some students, a Zoom call with some students at the University of Washington, D.C., UDC, where I live. And students there are speaking up and rallying, and they're going to testify at a zoning commission hearing on Thursday, because there's a big building there that's their library, that is maybe going to be demolished. And the students had absolutely no say about that. And they want student housing. They want a daycare center for children there. And they don't want all the pollution and everything. And also there are beautiful gardens all around that building where organic food is grown for the student food pantry. So the students are saying, wait a minute, we should have a say about what happens in the big building on our campus. So I've been helping them a lot in the last few months and encouraging them to speak up and to stand up. I speak up about healthcare issues for young people and housing issues and against pollution, and that we need to have policies. Students should be on the school board. Students should be voting members of the school board, not just on the school board, but voting members of the school board. You should have a say about what's taught in your schools. You should have a say about your school lunches, about your dress codes, about everything I think that affects your lives. The books in the library, the books in your teachers' classes, all of it. These are things that students should have a say about.
Excellent. And can you talk about, I've got a question of, are there any recent cases that resemble or share similarities with yours that we've seen before the Supreme Court or maybe in other courts?
Well, there was a case 2 years ago where a student won the case, and that was called Mahanoy. There's only been 4 cases at the Supreme Court since our case, and this one was called Mahanoy. And what happened in that case, I'll show you her picture. She won her case, and she was upset because she didn't get on the cheerleading squad. It was Brandy Levy, and she said she did something that I know a lot of you would not agree with. She said a curse word on her Snapchat about the cheerleading program. She was really, really mad. So she got punished for that, and it ended up in court. And the court ruled in favor of her and said, wait, she had a right to express herself. She wasn't even in school when she did this. She was out at a store with her friend. So that was a victory for students' free speech rights. Of course, I'm not encouraging you to curse or anything, but that's something that a student won. That, and then there were 3 other cases before that one where students lost. All of these, by the way, are ACLU cases. The ACLU goes to court, the Supreme Court, more than any organization. Bethel versus Frazier, the Supreme Court said you cannot have obscenity in your free speech. Hazelwood said that if the free speech is school sponsored, like a school newspaper, the school has more right to censor it. However, 15 states, and check and see if your state is one, 15 states have passed laws saying, no, actually, we're going to support our student journalists. They're going to have free speech in our state. And then the last one, Morris v. Frederick, says that you cannot advocate for illegal drugs in school. But there are some cases going on right now, some having to do with book bannings, one having to do with a girl that wants to advocate for like gun control, and then students wanting to advocate for guns. There's a girl who wanted to put a gun on her t-shirt, and the teacher said no. So that's going to be interesting to see how that works out. But there are different cases, some having to do with Black Lives Matter and whether students are able to put up Black Lives Matter flags in their classrooms, and also a lot going on with teachers' rights, because as it turns out, teachers' rights and students' rights are very closely connected. When it's a good time for students' rights, it's a good time for teachers' rights. And when it's a bad time for students' rights, it's a bad time for teachers' rights. This is kind of a bad time for both, actually, but students and teachers are speaking up.
Excellent. And sadly, we're coming to the end of our conversation, but I'll end with sort of a broad question, I guess. For our students, why is it important for students to learn about the First Amendment and about the Constitution more broadly?
It's so important for students to know about the Constitution and their rights. Because why? Because you can use your rights to change things that need changed, things that are not right, things that need improvement, and to take us towards our ideals of our country. The Constitution talks about equality and justice for all, and that's an ideal that we need to move towards, that we don't always have in our country and that we haven't had. And so it's good for us to know about it because it helps us to get our country, moving towards a better place. We can always use improvement. We have many things that we do need to improve. Plus, it's a good way of life. It's good for your health, as I said, all your mental, social health, and you meet interesting people, and it's even kind of fun some days. I made this little coloring book about all different things kids are speaking up and standing up about, whether it's animal rights or school lunches or racial justice, immigrants' rights, disability rights. And kids are finding ways to also make it kind of fun. So I hope you all had some fun today, and I hope you have some fun learning about your rights and also using them, because as they say, if you don't use your rights, you could lose them. It's just like your muscles. Got to use your rights to keep them and make them stronger, everybody. So best wishes to all of you and to the Constitution Center, that you will learn your rights and use them and make our country stronger and better. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you so much, Mary Beth. It was fantastic having you on. I wrote this down, what you said at the beginning, live your beliefs. So students, I think we can take that, put it to practice in our everyday life, in our celebration of We the People.
Thank you.
Round of applause. Thank you so much, Mary Beth, for joining us. This was fantastic. Tom, thank you for being our rock star moderator. And everyone have a fantastic Constitution Day, and we will see you again soon.
Thanks, everyone. Love is the way. Take care. Be good to yourselves and each other.